You ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Hi, this is Sheila Mac with the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people with real solutions helping you to rebuild, reboot, and reinvent your life on your terms. Today we have special guest Auguste CRENSHAW, and she is in a world when anyone can label themselves as an entrepreneur. Auguste CRENSHAW knows the number one unique identity factor is you. Auguste CRENSHAW is a business coach who specializes in strategy, mindset, and sales. You can find her somewhere on social media, giving a ton of value. She is an epitome of living and breathing unapologetically. Me too. Her favorite weapon is her mindset. More importantly, she knows the power of being herself. She loves to transfer knowledge, strategies, and infuse confidence in women in business. All right, welcome to the show.
Thank you, darling. And everybody does it. Ignore the E, just August.
August. Oh my goodness. See, now isn't that, I am such a rock star. I should have checked and I should have known.
It's all good. It's whatever registers in everybody's mind, but at least you said Auguste. I've had people say like Augustine, and I'm like, that's not even phonetically possible. But yeah, no, so we're good, darling.
Oh, well, thank you. See, now everybody calls me Sheila, and I'm Sheila, and I mean all the time too. And then I decided, fine, and I named my daughter Sheila.
Wow.
Sheila. So it kind of works out. And when they're calling me Sheila, I'm like, I just think of my daughter. And I'm like, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So welcome to the show. Tell me about how you're getting through this year and what advice you have for women in business to get through this crazy year.
How am I getting through this year? I'm getting through it by not compromising. That means I'm very self-aware of who I am, why I was created, and what it is that I'm supposed to do. And I'm very, very narrow-minded when it comes to that, but I am very flexible on how I get there. And this year hasn't been difficult for me because of COVID. It's been difficult for me because of some spiritual and some physical personal issues that came up. And so sometimes you do have to pull back and breathe, but then after that, be very unrelenting about why you are here on this earth. And if you have the mindset to always look at things and not complain about what you see, but be like, you know what can I do? What can I do? Having that type of thought process, you will come up with all of these very creative answers because you're asking your mind the right question.
I love that. You know, I went on this trip to India and I stayed with the spiritual monks in India for a few weeks. I mean, I had to have a special permission slip to get up because I couldn't sit still that long because that's just me. And when I was there, the whole 2 weeks, it was just take what is the next right action. Let that be your prayer when you're going through something. What is our next right action to do? Yeah. And when you're going through tough times, physical things going on in your personal life or the world around us affects us, just taking the next step, even if it's a teeny step. Some days it's like, okay, I just woke up and I got through the day.
Yes.
And that's it. Yes.
Yeah,
So
no, you have to, and I can't blame you. I'm a patient woman, but I don't know if I can sit as long as they do either. But
no,
that part is where I feel like a lot of women miss it. It's like, just what's the next right thing to do, and then just doing that. I find that we have a tendency to want to move after we have plot planned and strategized. And we have this big plan and it's this big to do and we've mapped everything out. But sometimes you're going to have a very spontaneous thought and then you just need to put it in motion. And so those spontaneous thoughts for me have had me put offers out there where
Mhm.
I'm looking at my business and saying, oh, wow, okay, well, the money still just keeps on rolling in. The connections keep on rolling in. The relationships are still being built. And so when people say, you could create your own reality, it's not woo woo. It's not people just saying something you're just supposed to think like until it finally happens. Some of us are living two totally different realities right now and in similar situations. I'm not talking about people who are in a complete, you lost your job, lost your house, lost your car. No, some of you, especially my ladies in business, right before it completely hit the fan, you were sitting in the same spot that possibly Sheila and I were sitting at, like, oh my God, this is like serious. And the whole country's turned upside down. And what do we do? And we could have paused for too long, just like some of you did. But we were like, we're solution oriented. Well, duh, we're entrepreneurs. We're made to be problem solvers. So what next? And we stepped into action, and then the rest is history. We still here, and you guys have plenty of time to rebound if any of you found yourself in that place where you sat still for too long. But a lot of times that's really all the difference.
It really is. And if you did get immobilized or stuck, and I know that for me, I lost my son in December. There were like 3 months where I was pretty stuck and I was okay with, going through the grieving process. And I was okay. I was giving myself permission to have that moment, that time, that universal pause that maybe we needed in some way, and
Mhm.
not be upset with yourself if you did have that time where you needed to just take it all in and figure out where you're going next. And then at a certain point, then you're ready to reboot. You're ready to reinvent your life, invent your business on your terms.
You know what? And I have no problem sharing it. I ended up losing a child. And so I had got to the point I had got excited. It was already some controversy at the beginning of the pregnancy, and I had got to 14 weeks. And so I was just like, oh man, like my situation was very traumatic. I just did an interview with somebody about this because I know there are a lot of women that have had miscarriages, but
Mhm.
it's one of those things where it's like, oh God, that's so awful. But for a woman like me, you can't even say the word sperm without me getting pregnant or having kids. It was kind of, I've never had to deal with that. Easily, I get pregnant easy. I give birth easy. 2 pushes got one of my babies out of my vagina. So I was like, hey, this is like easy peasy lemon squeezy. But not only was it the emotional trauma of losing a child, it was actually physically traumatic. I
Mhm.
know that I lost too much blood on the first day. I was bleeding so much that I literally just stayed in the bathtub because I was like, if I leave, I'm just going to have just a trail of blood following me, to the point I was, fainting, almost, was dizzy. But the spiritual and the emotional side of things, I just could not even try to wrap my mind around focusing. And for a person like me that's been a go-getter all her life, been on my own and living in my own place since I was 19, taking care of a child as a teen mom, always been a beast, to not have an answer, to not have a clue, to not what to do was like totally not normal to me. And I
Mhm.
couldn't really show up, and I couldn't really do live video, and I couldn't really think of a strategy. And that is something that I did not fight. And that's that balance that I want to put there. If you're dealing with something that really is traumatic, then you need that universal pause. And
Yeah.
I did, but I did practice what I preach as well too. And so I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm like, divine, what do I need right now? And I went hardcore into, my meditating and anything that had to do with, spiritual cleansing and just laying down and resting. And I'll fast forward, so I'm not talking forever. But I did want to share this. But the funny thing is, I did a live event this year. And I was like, okay, I was able to bounce back. And that was the one thing that gave me excitement. And
Mhm.
when that live event happened, her experience was not physically traumatic, but a woman actually miscarried at the event.
Oh, wow.
And it left me in a place as a leader to be able to support her differently. And it also opened up the door for us as women together to have a true sisterhood around her. And so, who would have thought? And this is someone that I was really close to, who's also a friend and not just a client. We've been close now for several years. You just never know what's happening and how anything could be used, not just for your favor, but for the favor of the life of those people that are connected to you. And so, we don't want you to force.
Right.
We don't want you to force this, but we want you to be a force within when you have the ability to move.
I agree. And it's really interesting because back in the day, and this is not too long ago, women wouldn't even discuss this. They wouldn't talk about a loss like this. It's a private thing, and it's like we don't talk about it. And it's so important. I think this 2020 is the beginning of a decade where we're like bringing things in the open that need to be out there. We're bringing the light to everything, and it's like, you know what? We're going to be in community, and
Yeah.
we need that. We need love and community more than ever. And I think we all got sent to our rooms. I mean, for
Yeah.
punishing women for having their bodies and having these life situations happen. This is very common that a woman could lose a child, have a few miscarriages in their life.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the statistics exactly, but it is very, very common. I think it's
Yeah.
quite a few, out of 10, most of them are going to have had that experience or been close to someone else that had that experience. And
Absolutely.
it's a secret, and we're done
Yeah.
with secrets.
And I was having the conversation, or rather the interview with the other young lady, and it's like I don't want to necessarily give all the graphic or the hoary details because then it's just going to make everything. Oh, this is what I should expect. Because, like for instance, with the young lady at my event, it was not as painful, mild pain. But then, as soon as the event was over, she has gone through a prolonged process, and she's seen her doctor and everything, but she's been bleeding for like 21 days. Whereas mine was hardcore and horrendous pain immediately, a whole lot of blood loss the first day and a little bit the next day. And so, but my thing is I just didn't have a clue. And
Mhm.
and that, no, my grandmother, I knew that she had one of my aunts. I remember being a little kid, and my granny was like, I remember her specifically saying, "Do you know why Auntie such and such is in the hospital right now?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "But don't tell anybody. She had a miscarriage." And I was a little kid, and so I honored I could keep a secret really good, but that's something going forward. It's like you all didn't want to prepare me for that. You didn't want to tell me. Yeah, don't traumatize me and tell me once I'm pregnant. Oh, well, by the way.
Right.
But just like you're supposed to talk to your daughters about their menstrual cycle, talk to them about the probabilities and the things that can happen. Because you know what? If I were to get 10 women in a room right now that I know, I could think of 10 women right off the bat who either did, like I just named 2 in my family. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? And then I just talked about my girlfriend. And I could probably easily name 8 without even pausing to think about 9 or 10. So yeah, I may not have the statistics, but it is more common. And now with the stuff they put in the food or whatever, call it conspiracy or not, but it isn't really making our bodies that healthy, and all of the different types of medications. They tell you a lot of them that they may be damaging, or to your DNA or to your body. And so it seems like it's more common, and they got fertility clinics everywhere. So yeah, you do. And I think that this is probably one of the biggest things that does hurt women, and not even with the losing children, but when things are out of whack with our kids and we're building a business, that's a lot to manage. Mom guilt and all of that stuff. And to still be able to feel like you're balancing home life
Mhm.
and your business and loving on your children and not being negligent, we deal with a lot.
We do. We really, really do. And that secret, it's really interesting. My mother had a miscarriage before me, but it was far enough along where they knew it was a little boy. And she
Mm,
would say, "Your brother's always with you." You know, and she always talked about it openly, and that was very rare for that time. And she would say, yeah, his spirit's with you and he's going to help you in life. And it was just, wow, you know, what a different way of looking at it. And a lot of people didn't have that blessing. But I also remember my grandparents, and you didn't talk about anything. It was like, you don't have permission to be a woman. As far as any of that goes, you just, you know, suck it up, look good, do what you need to do, and keep going. And that was like the motto. And so I think honesty is so important. And if you're out there and you're going through a tough time, I really believe that every time I interview someone, somebody is listening that needs to hear your story.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so if you're going through something, don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. There are so many people and organizations that can help you. In fact, I just found out about this 211. I don't know if you've heard about the 211 is the 411 now. So if you need resources, you call this 211. And they will connect you with resources in your community. So right now, people might need a food bank. They might need some help emotionally getting through something that's happened this year. They might need to get help relocating because now, you know, the rents are coming due and people still don't have the money, and people are being evicted in some states. And so this way, there's something in force where they can get the resources and the help they need. Maybe they're getting away from an abusive home, and they can call this number and get some type of resources. So even if you don't have someone to connect to, you have that will connect you. So getting into community. And it's really interesting because a lot of the spiritual centers, a lot of the different places that people would go to come together in community are still banned, even though things are open again. And it's just bizarre, you know. That's an interesting thing, because we need that kind of community, whatever spirituality or not, of women and people coming together, especially women, to support each other as parents, now that we have our kids home a lot of the times.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I think is just really crappy is that when it comes to being a woman, where, like you said, not only are a lot of things like, shh, you don't talk about that. And I know that our culture is breaking away from that. I don't want to say a cuss word. Is this clean?
Oh, we can have to say bleep because this is going on the radio later.
No problem. I want to make sure I check myself. You guys, like I said, I'm authentic, but I respect the platform. But I'm a cusser. But no, I think that it's really crappy that, you know, there are stereotypes of how a woman should show up. And so, you know, in my community, we talk a lot about no longer being a strong Black woman. But even if we take race off of it, there's still this stereotype to a degree that when women, we could be the epitome of beauty. You know, we can be mothers, you know, but there's always been that, you know, if you're climbing the corporate ladder, you're cold-hearted. But if you're at home and you're raising the children, you're warm. You know, are you ladylike versus are you more whorish? You know, it's always just like these very distinct lines that we're not supposed to cross. But I look at men, it's like you just be whatever you want to be. You can be an athlete, you can be an exec. The only thing you probably couldn't be that was shunned was a stay-at-home dad. But, you know, there's like always been like these very specific parameters around us. And now we're coming out and we're you know, we're saying, look, this is who I am. This is how I am. This is what I believe in. Those gender rules, they are trashed in my marriage. You know, they are trashed in my career, and I'm not raising my daughter to think like that. She's got just as much freedom and flexibility to be whatever it is that she wants to be, you know, just like, you know, my son does. And so whoever came up with stereotypes, men, you know, bump that, you know, screw you. But a lot of us do have to double check and make sure that's not who we're being. You know, my grandmother didn't tell me you have to be this way if you're going to be a wife, but there were certain things based on the way they talked about praying and being a sanctified wife, you know, when you went to church and stuff like that, that I realized that there were certain attributes about her that I picked up. And as I got older, I was like, I don't want to do those things, in a relationship. So I just wanted to say that. And on the other part about, the sisterhood and just being around other people and asking for help, I don't think you should put everything on social media before I say this. And I'm not saying that everybody should. Now, it aligns very much with my brand. And I do position my stories in such a manner that I never embellish or lie, but I do protect the integrity of my personality. But because I have such a very strong presence and people look at me like, oh, August, you're a beast, you always go. I'm very intimate with my audience, and I share, like I did with the miscarriage, I share my vulnerable moments because I just refuse to let them hold me. And when I needed to cry and vent and exhale beyond my husband, yes, them girlfriends, they are on speed dial. Oh my God, this is how I feel. This is what this is. And too long, we've been so busy fulfilling that stereotype of what a woman should look like and being, dainty and being a lady and holding it all together. And we said, no, because that's what I saw with my grandmother. I saw her be in a relationship she didn't even like, but you didn't get married to get divorced, and God hated divorce. And so she went along. But when she got older, she was suffering from amnesia. And I remember when I saw her, I told her, Granny, it's selective amnesia, because you better not remember the pain of your life. And at that point, there was this like understanding between she and I. But I was like, I'm not going to say nothing to nobody. I didn't say anything to anybody at all, but that's a really sad way, unfortunately, to live before you go, because you have so many painful memories that you'd rather just not remember anything.
Yeah, this is very true. I wonder if that happens, and I think that, like my grandmother, she lived to be 103. And she was a salty old lady. She would tell some dirty jokes. She could cuss with you any day. You would have loved to have her on your you could discuss freely. I mean, you would love her. Yet, one thing is, she always said, if only I knew what I know now. 2020 hindsight. And whoa, I get the chills because we are in 2020.
Yeah.
And we know a lot now. So what are we going to do with it building this new decade?
Yes. And you know what? A lot of people, and even I'm grateful that I began to make a lot of changes, I want to say, right before we left St. Louis in 2014. But a lot of you just need to get out of your identity crisis. You know what you see, what you feel, and what you believe, and everything inside of you has told you that things have to change. But a lot of us, we have those kind of thoughts, but then we don't change because we're still comfortable being in those familiar circles. And our girlfriends or our club members, they don't think like we think. And we tried to say something to one of them, and they thought, oh, girl, you were serious, and kind of brushed it off. But it's scary to start over. It's scary to build new relationships, but you're going to have to tune in, and you're going to have to realize that actually you're not crazy. And those revelations are from the divine. When I was in St. Louis, I got this wild hair up my tootie that I told my husband, we should move to Houston. I'm not going to do hair anymore. And I'm going to start my jewelry business down there. And he was like, okay, we won't get into that, but he said, okay. And this was a decision that was made mid-April. And we just told our family, we're moving, we're selling our house, blah, 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 and we're going to Houston, and we're going to be there, before the end of July. And everybody was like, the market is terrible. How are you going to do that? And we're like, we're just telling you what we're going to do. 2 weeks later, had the moving sale, got every non-essential thing out. And then when we got to Houston, some doors were open to me for business. And I was like, wow, I don't even want to do the jewelry thing, but I know I'm not supposed to do the hair thing. And I sat in this place and I was quiet and I'm like, God, what am I supposed to do? And that's what got me into online coaching. And just the thought of it, the need to know that I needed to do something different. I was like, wait a minute, those little visions and dreams that I heard about my voice being heard, those dreams that my friends would say, girl, I had a dream and you were just talking to a sea of people, I was like, this could really happen because of what is possible online. And then I was like, you guys need to do live video. Every time you turn around, I was doing a live video workshop or a challenge or something. And even though I had a lot of people sign up, I'm like, they're not signing up as readily as they are. And now everybody and their mama want to know how to put on a summit. Everybody wants to start a podcast. Everybody wants to know how to do live video. But see, in 2016, when I was like, come on, let me show you, 2017, 2018, 2019, many of you weren't listening. I don't know where my life would be right now if I had to depend on a job, considering the way that they're laying people off. Same thing with investing. My husband and I, we were like, we got to invest, we got to invest, we got to invest, we got to turn this thing around, because we spent a lot of money in my business and it flopped in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? In order to rebound and get ourselves not back to where we were, but beyond, that weird thought. And for some of you guys that are listening, you might be like, oh, that's easy. But when I was growing up, they ain't talking about no investments. My grandfather had a real pension. And after that, it was like you could sign up for a 401k on your job. The majority of them were not entrepreneurs, and they were not talking about building wealth. They were only talking about getting your hustle on to make some money. So there's a lot of things that were coming to me. And instead of saying, oh, that's just rich folk gambling, that's all the stock market and investing in currency and all that stuff is, it was like, no, research, get educated. And so a lot of that has impacted why we're in the situation that we're in now, because we listen to the little tiny voices. And you know what? Every time we listened, we ran into people in communities all around the world and even in our local area who believe and think how we believe and think. So a lot of you all, but if you want to reshape what's going to happen for the next decade, quit thinking about how much time has been lost and start moving like there's no more time to lose. That's what you do.
Yes. And I go back to, women and how we're in those little special, like, you've got to be this way or that way. You've got to do this or that. And I know I've even had friends that when I said, well, I'm going to go do this or that, and they're like, well, what you really should do is you should, go move into an apartment, go work a little job at the grocery store part-time, and just be good with that, because that's all you're going to do. What you think you're doing is just ridiculous. And that was a long time ago. And then they came back to me, months later, and they were like, wow, you really know what you're doing. You're kind of crazy, Sheila, but you are good with business. And I was like, thank you. And when I heard them, there was that moment of self-doubt where I was like, oh, maybe they're right. I respect them. They're my friends. And they really cared. And they were like trying to protect me in their minds. That's how they're doing their lives. So, And I was like, no, but I've done this before. I have rebuilt my life many times, because life does that. And you have to at different stages. And I'm like, I got this. That's one thing. You could put me anywhere and I figure it out. No problem. And I knew that. And so I think that's confidence, and not playing into all these. I mean, like, you'll get looks. Yeah. Women will give other women's looks like that could kill, because you're not following the rules they're following. Yes, you're not living, you're walking on the tightrope they're on, or whatever they're doing. And it's like, you go do you. I'm good doing who I am, and that's okay. Like, I don't care what you do. You know what I mean? Like, it's that the looks are almost like you're breaking the rules.
Yeah, but you know what? You are breaking the rules of normalcy. And I know that one of the things that has really impacted the way that I think, other than the way that I'm wired, is the things that I've entertained. And it, like, for instance, there's a wonderful book by Bruce Wilkinson that's called The Dream Giver. And when I read that book, it is written kind of like a parable, and it starts off and it never says a name. It's like, in the town, the familiar, ordinary is somebody who realized that he wasn't just supposed to be anybody, but he was destined to be a great someone that was going to do great things. And so then it just talks about how ordinary lived in this box, and how one day the dream giver came to him, and then it starts talking about all the other people in their boxes. And when he began to speak about what it was that he wanted to do, how all of these people, out of the fear, the desire to protect him, gave advice. And so you're listening to the instructions, and you think to yourself while you're reading, yeah, I'm somebody who needs to leave the land of familiar, because I'm destined to be a great someone and do great things. And so because it never uses a name and you read it, it's like, wow. And it
Mhm.
really opens you up to saying, what makes me different? And it really makes you look at the people that are around you. And of course, it doesn't teach you to resent any of those people, but just to be aware that that's as far as their mind can take them. And so watching the journey and reading books like that, it already sets something up in my spirit to say, you know what? You're destined to do great things. So even though you're afraid, you just be like ordinary and go through that invisible wall of fear.
Mhm.
Because it's so cool when you read it. It's like, oh my God, I'm stuck. I can't move. I can't move. And it's like, yeah, because you're afraid. And as soon as he realized that he wasn't afraid anymore, bam, he went through. And it's so funny because of one part of the book. I promise I'm not going to give it all away just in case somebody's thinking about reading it. His father, actually, to his surprise, was one of the few people that encouraged him. He's like, yep, I remember I had my feather and I was writing my dream and I was going to do it. He said, but I didn't. And he told his son, but you go, you still got time and you do it. And most of us somewhere, whether even if it's a stranger that aligns with a vision or that one person that we didn't expect, somebody, if you open up your mouth and you speak and you believe, they're going to affirm it. And you just have to make a decision on whose voice you're going to listen to, when you move forward. And the eye cuts and the attitude, you're just gonna have to leave it where it's at and really truly, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you learn that what people feel, that's their truth.
Yeah.
And it's the truth for
Right.
this moment in time. Maybe next year they'll change. But when we say we want to honor people's truths, we don't necessarily realize that just because it doesn't line up with ours doesn't mean it's a lie.
Yes, yes. And for them, it is like you're saying, it is their truth. I mean, you think about that, and it's interesting because I think that sometimes when you get the looks, it's almost like they're looking, but it's not, it's judgment, but it's also like, hey, maybe that looks kind of interesting. I might want to go do that one day. I'm just afraid right now.
Yeah. And some
You
people are afraid forever and they will admire from a distance. And some people will look and be afraid and be low key angry, but they're really not angry at you. They're angry with themselves because why couldn't they do it? And I really see this a lot with women because what I find is that we are looking for validation. Yeah, I coach women all the time, and I'll be like, "What are you doing?" And I do this. I'm like, "Okay, how do you do it?" I'm like, "Girl, they're talking." I'm like, "That's a 5 week course right there. You could charge this, you could do that, blah 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 blah." Who have you done? Oh, and they start telling me everybody they did it for, and it's like, "Oh, you got testimonials already? Let's go ahead and launch this program."
Right.
You're just starting to promote. You might get no people to sign up. You may get a few people to sign up, but we got to get this thing moving. August, I love you. This is so great. I have more clarity than I've ever had in my entire life. But okay, but I enrolled in this program, and so I'm going to go get my certification. And after I get my certification, then I'm going to woo woo woo. And I know some women that are certification crazy.
Yes.
I worked with this one woman. I've worked with a lot of healers, yoga instructors, and stuff like that. And I remember I worked with this one woman, and she was like, I want to do a yoga studio, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, listen, you have minimal time, you have minimal access to funds. But I'm
Mhm.
like, look, capitalize this. Once again, this is early on, probably like 2018. I'm like, capitalize in the online arena. Yeah, but I work with the Y and this, and they barely charge those people $20 a month, just to have 4 yoga. So I said, sweetie, we're talking about 2 completely different markets. We're talking about the convenience of not having to leave your home when it's wet or dry, cold or hot. I said, and plus, you got a different kind of soul. You got a different kind of swag to the yoga you're doing. Market that. Well, I'm not going to do it unless I can get X amount of people to sign up and I can get this. And so now I'm doing this type of yoga and that type of yoga. And I thought you're supposed to breathe this way. And now I know that. And she signed up to work with me again. And she still, every time I turned around, she would never move. So you want to know what's crazy? Is that when COVID hit, what do you think people were doing once it was time to work out?
Working
And
out.
guess who didn't get any of that money? Because even after 2 years, she never freaking started it.
Mhm.
And I just look and I just, I don't say anything. It's one of those golden I told you so moments, but I'm not going to say that to you. But she didn't move. She didn't take action. And you could bet your bottom dollar that our conversation is be reduced to diddly squat, not because I'm too good to talk to her. But every time you talk to me, you're gonna have to be convicted. Even if I don't say anything, you think I'm thinking I told you so. I'm sitting there thinking like, oh my God, it's gonna be even more difficult now. But how much longer are you gonna wait? That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Don't think about how much time is lost. Move like there's no more time to lose. And so people got their own demons. They got their own issues that they're battling with. And so when they get real crappy with the way that they act and all that stuff, I realize it's not about me. It's about you. And the way that I move, you think it's insane and crazy because you ain't moving.
That's right. That's right. The raving fans of the world, the judgers, are sitting there watching everybody else's life and critiquing everyone, and they haven't moved off their sofa.
I don't know.
It's like, well,
Oh, ouch. But that is really one of the biggest things that and it's a true pet peeve of mine, because I have people say, what do you think about such and such and such? And I'll be like, wait a minute, hold up, what happened? Well, such and such did this and they met with this, and this person's a supporter of Biden versus a Trump, or this person did this, and this person's married and this person's getting divorced. And I'm like, okay, I missed all of that.
Right.
It's like, yeah, but I just think it's so crazy because they're a mom and and I'm like, okay, but you see, the reason why I missed it, because I was so busy handling my own business.
Exactly.
Go get you some. Like, seriously, go get you some, because you know too much about everybody else's life. So you obviously are not preoccupied with greatness.
That's right.
Seriously.
Yes.
Girl, I gotta make a post.
We have to replay that like 5 times.
Oh my God.
Record that, and anytime you get anything on social, just play it back to them. That was it.
Oh God.
Good.
I seriously wrote a note. When we get off of here, I'm putting it as a post on Facebook. To somebody.
Yes, so right. So right.
Oh gosh.
And somebody really needed to hear that today.
Yeah, seriously.
Maybe they needed to hear it on both sides. They could have been the one handing it out, or the one that was receiving it. That's like, you don't need to receive that anymore. You can just let them keep that. That's theirs. They own it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Whew, this is a deep conversation.
So good. So we're coming to the end of time here a little bit. So I wanted to get more into, I know I was a guest on your show. Do you want to share about your show a little bit?
Sure. Well, for those of you that are looking for some of that entrepreneurial hustle and beast mode that I'm talking about, I have a podcast. I'm so excited. This November the 6th, which is National Raw, Real, and Relentless Day, will be the 3rd year that we've been going, but it's called Real Women Don't BI. And I chose that name because it makes me think of my grandmother. Slow down, people. Don't take that out of context. But no, I have one of those grandmas that back in the day when you would say, what's going on or how you feel, and she'd say, I'm feeling good, wouldn't complain anyway, because it doesn't change anything. And so since I'm very authentic with the polarizing side of how I get people's attention, it's about not whining, itching, or complaining, and so on and so forth, because life is going to throw something at you. Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And so it's not about you denying yourself your story. It's just about not allowing it to rule you, because everybody's got a story to tell, and yours is either going to empower you or devour you. And I'm hoping that you'll choose to be empowered. So we talk about real life and real business, and I have real guests that are willing to talk about real things that pop up in business so that you can stay encouraged, because all of you don't have access to the same resources. And so we don't want you thinking that you're going to take 6 steps to 6 figures in 6 days, and then voila, everything is just perfect. Like you said earlier, life is going to continue to throw you some curveballs. And so I've been doing that podcast for a while now, and it's my heart and my passion, because it's definitely that motivation, that you need to say, okay, I can keep my head in the game a little while longer.
I love it. It is so good. And where do they go to find this
Everywhere. Seriously.
podcast?
iTunes, Spotify, iHeart. You can find me on Facebook. It automatically posts there. If you follow me on LinkedIn, it automatically populates there. Podchaser. There's only a few of them. The main heavy hitters, we're there. And then, of course, you could always go to augustecrenshaw.com and click the podcast tab. But yeah, you can find me on pretty much everywhere. I stopped producing it through SoundCloud because it's really more so for music. But and I got tired of people spamming me because they like the inspire and the power the way the song. It's like you should really do something with that song. It's dope. You know that they only listen like to the first 15 seconds, and it's like I'm not here because I want to be a music artist. So it's not like I was getting a lot of leads from it, a decent amount of listens, but yeah, I did take it off of SoundCloud just in case somebody looks. You might only find maybe about 6, probably 10 episodes to sample, but that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you. So now tell me a little bit more about your coaching business and how people can connect with you for that.
Absolutely. So I'm a business and sales coach, and I specialize in strategy, mindset, and sales, which all that means is that I get into your mind and get you to walk in that confidence, to stop playing with those certification programs. But I look at how you are serving, so you truly package and price your products and services so that you can profit. A lot of us, sometimes the way that we step into the marketplace, we strip away the opportunities to minimize overhead. And so I do help women truly capitalize on the power of social media. Now, I've had plenty of brick and mortar clients, but what I've helped them do with social media has also catapulted their brick and mortar business. And so, at the end of the day, the groundwork with me is always going to be in solidifying who you are, who your ideal client is, and then the best ways that you can serve them. And then after you get all this attention, you got to know how to sell, baby. So I'm going to also help you with that. Like I said, you can find me anywhere on social media. You can always find me on augustecrenshaw.com, but you can find me on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, even though I don't use it. But if August Crenshaw exists, then you will find me there. And so I have varying products. I have low ticket, medium ticket, and high ticket ways in which I serve group versus one-to-one to help you get there. Even do it yourself online academy where you can, work on some things if you're interested in starting a business, but you don't necessarily know where and you don't want to do a steep investment. I got you.
All right. Well, thank you again for being a guest on the show. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. We will see you next time on the Sheila Mac Show. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and action steps to help you rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and we are here today on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. Now, if you were listening earlier, we just had an incredible friend of mine, a beautiful person, Auguste CRENSHAW, and she has shared her story of how she had to overcome some rock bottoms and get back on track. And we had a really deep conversation about the difficulties and realities that some of us ladies have had to deal with in life. And we got into the topic of people who have experienced a loss and even a miscarriage, and this could happen to anyone. It happens to a lot of women. One of the things in our discussion was we talked about how sometimes people don't really share about it or don't want to talk about a situation like that. It used to be back in the day that, women, we had something like this happen to us and it was a private thing and you don't talk to anyone, and yet you're grieving and going through things, and it's not even acceptable back then to talk about these. And it's so important that now, in the beginning of this new entire decade, that we are able to now bring out truths and realities and talk about things that maybe we were afraid to talk about, or it wasn't okay to talk about these things. And I think that that's the whole new energy and shift in our interesting times. Is the beauty of that is that we are going to be sharing our truth and realities and asking for help when we need it, coming together in community, and helping each other, having open discussions and conversations about things that are really important. So right now I wanted to share a Dear Sheila video that I had that goes into a lady's question and story about how she was overcoming a miscarriage and how she got back on track. Okay, take a listen. Dear Sheila, my worst fear has happened. I recently had a miscarriage, and I have been having a hard time with it. I can barely get out of bed every day, and I can't bring myself to get motivated to get back to work. I can't talk to my mom or friends about it because I didn't tell them I was pregnant. I was afraid that this would happen. I feel so alone. My husband has been kind and patient, but I'm afraid that this is negatively impacting our relationship. We haven't had sex in 6 months. I know that he wants to try for another baby, but I just am not ready for that. How can I recover from this? What can I do to feel like myself again so that I can be a good wife? I feel so stuck in this grief. How can I get past it? Signed, Stuck in Pain. Dear Stuck in Pain, the fact that you asked the question is part of your answer, because you know there's a certain time frame where you are stuck, and it's okay to grieve for as long as you need to grieve. It's okay to pace yourself. It may be that as a mom, we have an intuition. We have an intuition about when our bodies are even ready for another baby, when our emotional state is ready. So that's okay. If you're not ready to go have another baby yet, that's perfectly fine. That is more than fine. And if you still need to grieve, that's okay too. Yet I would, at this point, because you even said stuck in the pain, I would definitely get some grief counseling, because there's a point where letting go and knowing that there's something beyond this. In every culture that we've ever seen, if you look at all the scientific, religious, scientific, it doesn't matter if you're religious or not, there's studies of something beyond this field of existence, some type of something where whether a baby goes back to something else and comes back in another form or at a different time, you know, where somebody leaves and somebody else comes in, and it doesn't change the reality of losing a loved one or even a baby that hasn't come in yet. But it's a knowing that there is a cycle and a reason beyond our understanding. And it may be that there's a timing that's going to work out perfectly when you are ready. So listen to that. In my book and on my website, there's lots of resources for different ways to connect with free and low-cost grief counseling that I would look into as well. And just know that it's okay to not be ready, and don't jump into anything until your body and your heart and emotionalness is ready to try again. And that's okay too. I hope this helps. As always, I wish you life, love, laughter, and light. Thank you for listening to Dear Sheila, answering real questions with real solutions to reboot your life. If you have a burning question, submit your question now to www.dearsheila.com. www.dearsheila.com. If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and action steps to help you rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and we are here today on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. Now, if you were listening earlier, we just had an incredible friend of mine, a beautiful person, Auguste CRENSHAW, and she has shared her story of how she had to overcome some rock bottoms and get back on track. And we had a really deep conversation about the difficulties and realities that some of us ladies have had to deal with in life. And we got into the topic of people who have experienced a loss and even a miscarriage, and this could happen to anyone. It happens to a lot of women. One of the things in our discussion was we talked about how sometimes people don't really share about it or don't want to talk about a situation like that. It used to be back in the day that, women, we had something like this happen to us and it was a private thing and you don't talk to anyone, and yet you're grieving and going through things, and it's not even acceptable back then to talk about these. And it's so important that now, in the beginning of this new entire decade, that we are able to now bring out truths and realities and talk about things that maybe we were afraid to talk about, or it wasn't okay to talk about these things. And I think that that's the whole new energy and shift in our interesting times. Is the beauty of that is that we are going to be sharing our truth and realities and asking for help when we need it, coming together in community, and helping each other, having open discussions and conversations about things that are really important. So right now I wanted to share a Dear Sheila video that I had that goes into a lady's question and story about how she was overcoming a miscarriage and how she got back on track. Okay, take a listen. Okay, we're back, and if you're just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and action steps to help you rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and we are here today on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. Today we were focusing on healing and getting back on track after going through difficult events in life, and we got into the topic of even how people have had to walk the sacred journey of grieving and healing after having a miscarriage or losing a child. And so I hope you enjoyed that video and maybe found it helpful. Feel free to share that with a friend or loved one that may have also gone through an experience like that, because there's something beautiful, and there's something beautiful in community. We have freedom in community. It's such a gift. I can go all the way back to when I was this little girl and I had these beautiful women that were actually, I was staying with a grandparent, and they were all ladies that were probably, I don't know, in their 70s and 80s back then, that were my grandparents' friends, my grandmother's friends, and these ladies would get together and they'd all have tea, and I just happened to be there. So I'm like 5 years old, and I'm listening to these incredible women share their stories and their truths, and they talked openly and supported each other. They talked about things together with one another about, miscarriages and loss and grief and how they got back on track. They shared stories of, like, one of the ladies in the group had escaped a concentration camp when she was little, and she lost her entire family. And these kind of stories, living history. Another lady was told once her husband passed away that she couldn't run these Greek restaurants, and she did, and it was back in the day when that was kind of frowned upon, to open a restaurant and run it as a woman. And so we've come a long way, yet
these women were incredibly feminine, yet very stoic, and they were the people that were in my life, and I carried their stories and all their truths and living history with me. So it's so important to share real history and living stories with one another. It makes all the difference. Now, if you have a question for Dear Sheila, you may write into www.dearsheila.com, and we will share your story on the radio. So give a different name or pseudonym. And also, I have free gifts and prizes for those who do send in their questions. So I hope to hear from you soon, and thank you again for tuning in. Life on your terms. So your homework for today, if you haven't already done so, grab a copy of my book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom and back into action in any situation. And this month, what I am doing, one of the things I'm doing is for every book sold, whether that's on Kindle, Audible, or just a hard copy book, I will be donating a book additionally to various women's shelters in the area in Los Angeles and in Nevada. And that will be to help people that are getting back on track. Maybe they're there because they had to relocate and got dislocated due to the fires, due to the situations that are happening right now in our world, where in some states people are actually getting evicted now because they couldn't pay their rent due to COVID. So I am donating books to them. And also I wanted to share, if I don't remember if I shared or not, the 211 is the new 411. So if anybody out there listening needs to get a resource, a free resource or help in any situation, call the 211, or you can Google 211 and get connected to resources in your state. So 211 and your state's name. And this is a national program that gives you resources and tools. So if you need help with housing or bills or grief support or getting through a tough situation, that is another thing to have just as a resource for a friend or loved one that may also be going through that. So thank you again for tuning in, and I look forward to having you on as an audience next time. Thank you.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.SheilaMac.com today.